Okay, so we've made some good progress on the Founding Fathers Quotebook app, but our UI is just a little bit clunky. As we've been reading the Human Interface Guidelines document, does this really seem like the best way to introduce the user to our app? Pull it up and give them a stack of 3 buttons of, go set up the app or go look at the quote of the day or browse topics. No, that's not what you want to do. You don't want to interrupt the user's flow. You want to take them right to the quote of the day. So this was great for learning, but let's do it in a better fashion here. So we'll start by getting this stack of buttons, and let's just delete them. What I really want to do is I want to show the quote of the day as soon as the user arrives at the app. So let's go drag a web view, and let's get back up to a bigger size here. Let's go drag a web view right onto the initial view controller here. And for this iPhone 10, we'll actually cover that bottom area outside of the safe area. And we'll cover it so that, well, you'll see when we run the simulator why I'm doing that. Okay, now let's see. I want to change the background to white, and let's give it an alpha of, I don't know, 0.85? Something like that. You can fiddle with it and decide what alpha level you want. Maybe 0.8 is the right one, I'm not sure. But anyway, pick a number. I'll go with 0.85, and we'll put the quote right here. Now let's not forget to update our auto layout. So we'll pin it to all those 4 sides there. Okay, and okay, now let's go to our identity inspector. Instead of being a view controller now, I want this guy to be a quote view controller. All right, so there's my quote view controller, and let's go. We don't really even want this original view controller that got generated for us. Let's just delete it. So move to trash. Let's get rid of it out of the file system and everything. Okay, so back to the storyboard we go. And now there's one more thing we need to do. Remember, our quote view controller has an outlet in it. So see this web view? That outlet's going to be nil if we don't do something to connect it up over here on the storyboard. So, okay, now let's get our assistant editor. And it shows the quote view controller because we're here on the Founding Fathers Quotebook, which we've just said is a quote view controller. Now if I hover over this target, you see it doesn't highlight anything over here. But I can just drag from that target onto the web view, and it makes the connection. And now you see I do have something in that outlet. So it shouldn't fail, it should run. Let's just verify that it does. Launching, attaching, up it comes, and yep, there's our Thomas Jefferson quote. Now, notice that we've extended down into this beyond the safe area, and it doesn't much matter in portrait mode, but in landscape mode, let's see, rotate please. In landscape mode, I was getting a little bit of a dark area here. We would get a dark area if I didn't extend all the way down to the bottom there. That is, our web view wouldn't cover this last little bit if I didn't extend down to the bottom. Okay, anyway, so this feels a little bit better to me, but what we want to do now is instead of calling that Founding Fathers Quotebook, let's just call it Quote of the Day. And I'm not going to read that back button text anymore because I want to change the way I display these other bits. Alright, so zooming back out again. Alright, so I have these other, and I won't need this guy, so let's delete him. Okay, so I've got topics and I've got settings still to deal with. Well, a smarter way to do this, instead of having a stack of buttons, is to use the capabilities built into iOS here. And you've seen buttons before in apps up on the nav bar. Well, what you do is you can go get a UI bar button item. So let's go type bar and see all the bar things. There's a bar button item. I can put a button item on the right, or I can put a button item on the left. So let's do one for topics and one for settings. Let's put settings on the right and topics on the left. So you see over here that there are different styles, plain, bordered, done, and there are some custom or some system specified. So if I wanted just a save button, I could put that there, or some of these have a an icon instead of text, like camera. But there's not one for topics, so I'm going to go with custom. If I had my own icon, I could put it in right here, but I don't. I mean, if I chose Founding Fathers Square, it's just paying attention to the alpha channel, and so I get just this blue square if I use that particular image. So I need to do something different there. Let's delete that, and we'll just type topics here. Okay, and now on the right-hand side, similarly, we'll say settings. And now we can wire these to these other view controllers. So I'm going to do, now, instead of doing a show and pushing it onto the navigation controller, let's do a present modally, so it slides up from the bottom. Okay, so there's one. You see the icon on the Segway is a little different. And let's zoom out just a hair. And now we can control drag from topics down to this view controller, and we'll also present it modally. Now the problem with that is that once I present it, how do I unpresent it? So that's not wired in automatically like navigation controller has the back button. What will happen here is I'm stuck once I go to settings or go to topics. So I go to topics, up it pops, and now how do I get back? I don't have anything that gets back. Okay, so what I need to do here, let's embed this in its own navigation controller. All right, and now let's move this off to the side. And okay, so when we have a root view controller inside of a navigation controller, we need to set the title on the navigation item as we saw before in class. So I'm going to call this one topics. And now let's put a bar button item here that just says cancel. And that will let me, is there a system item called cancel? Yes, there is. Okay, so that will then let me unwind this. But here's how I have to go about unwinding it. I need to go to my quote view controller and give a target that I can then connect to with an unwind segue. So I'm going to create a special function that's marked IB action. If you remember our map it button, it went to an IB action called map it. Well, I'm going to create an IB action that I'm going to call exit modal scene. And now what it needs to take is a single parameter that is a UI storyboard segue. And I don't need to write any code here. I just need to have a target that I can connect to so that Xcode lets me wire this up. So I'm going to say nothing to do, just need a target for the unwind segue. Now an unwind segue is going to let us, okay, back to the storyboard. It's going to let us do an exit from this modal view. So, okay, let's zoom into 100. In fact, let's zoom in a little farther, 150%. Okay, so here I am. I've got my cancel button. And notice this little exit thing up here. If I control drag from cancel to exit, it goes to the segue that presented us. It knows that the quote view controller is the view controller that presented us. And it follows the segue backwards into that view controller and says, oh, I see this target for exit modal scene. And by connecting that up, we now have what's called an unwind segue. And that unwind, and you can see it over here in the document outline, right there. Unwind segue to exit modal scene. And you can see what I've selected over there, and if there were multiple possibilities, I could change it and all of that. Anyway, that will be enough to cancel that view controller, that modal popover. So let's do the same thing over here. Let's embed this guy in a navigation controller. And let's see, we need to move some things out of the way here. Move this guy over. Oops, too far. Okay, and now for this guy's title, we're going to say settings. And now for the buttons here, let's put a done button, because on settings, I want to make my adjustments and I want to say done. So I'm going to click the done style and then the done system item. And so that gives me kind of a bolder font and the word done. And again, let's control drag from that button up to exit, and it has that same target of exit modal scene. And if I run the thing, building, launching, attaching. Okay, here we go. All right, so topics. Up pops my topics. I click cancel and it pops right back down. Settings, up pops my settings. When done, it pops right down. And if I go to notify me daily, it does push in onto that navigation controller, and I have a back button. So that works fine. Now, but that is the other piece of the user interface that I find a little bit awkward and somewhat cumbersome. So I've got this notify on days, and I'd really rather, I mean, don't I have room here to just list all the days and maybe toggle the individual days? So come back to part 2 of this refactoring video, and we will fix that problem in the user interface.